I'm Arlene Herson, and my guest today is a woman of tomorrow. Ever since she was a little girl growing up in South Africa, she dreamed of other worlds and fantasized about the future. Recovering from polio, she was more at home with science fiction than the realities of the day. Well, today she has surpassed even her fantasies. She is president of Omni magazine, the leading science publication in the world, which with every issue explores fascinating phenomena and revolutionary breakthroughs in science. She is at the helm and is one of the highest paid female executives in the world. She is also vice chairman of Penthouse magazine, one of the most controversial magazines in the world. How does she balance the two? A fascinating woman. She has written a book called Woman of Tomorrow. We will meet her today. My guest is Kathy Keeton, and we'll meet her right after these messages. I'm Arlene Herson, and my guest is Kathy Keeton, and we're here in her beautiful townhouse in New York City. Thank you so much. I know how busy you are, and thank you for having us here.
It's a pleasure.
Well, it's a beautiful house, and you live here with Bob Guccione, who is your husband, but actually the man who changed your life. You have a wonderful life now, a fulfilling career, beautiful house, but it was 20 years ago, more than 20 years
25.
ago, probably 25 years ago, that you met Bob Guccione in London. He actually changed your whole life. He had a crazy idea. What made you
Well, I
believe
thought it
him?
was a very good idea. I mean, I wasn't in the publishing industry, so I didn't know from anything. I was a dancer. And to me, it made a lot of sense. It was very logical. Here was a very successful property in America. Why couldn't you duplicate it in Europe? And so I thought, well, I really have nothing to lose anyway. You know, I can work at night, and I might lose some sleep.
Okay, well, his crazy idea was Penthouse. And we all know it wasn't so crazy because we know now, look, here we're in this beautiful house. He made it work, obviously. But what made you believe in him personally, in the man that would make you change your life?
I had a strange feeling when I first met Bob that I'd known him all my life. I don't know if you ever meet people and you feel that. But I felt just totally comfortable and know that this man was perfectly trustworthy and I knew everything about him. I just felt I knew it. And like, it seemed like we'd always been together, we're always meant to be or something.
You know, it's interesting because your backgrounds are so different.
Yes,
you were born in South Africa, and even though actually Penthouse is the magazine that really changed your life and brought you and Bob together and brought you here to the States, you are president of Omni magazine,
Yes.
which is the leading science magazine in the world, completely different from Penthouse. But you, as a young girl, were very interested in science. How did that start?
I wanted to be a scientist. Given an opportunity, I would have become a biologist. But you little girls didn't get to do things like that in South Africa in those days, or in England, or in America for that matter. And so I sort of vicariously satisfied my passion for science by reading by myself or going to museums.
Well, but it started by chance. That I understand too, because you had polio as a child?
Well, what happened was my mom took me to see a movie, and it sounds like a crazy story, but it's true. And the movie was Tarzan of the Apes. And I fell in love with Tarzan. I mean, I thought this is the most wonderful thing in the world. So I ran to the library the next day to see if I could buy any or find any Tarzan books. There weren't any books on Tarzan, but Edgar Rice Burroughs was also a science fiction writer, and he'd written a whole series of science fiction novels, and I picked up one, and that was it for me. My life was determined.
Actually, the book, if I recall, is called Princess of Mars.
That's right.
And you've kind of become a princess here in this beautiful mansion. And I read in your book, you wrote a book called Woman of Tomorrow, that you would like to be among the very first to land on Mars.
You bet. Yeah, I would give anything for that. I think that's the whole space program, the whole idea of getting off of this planet and exploring the rest of the solar system and eventually going to other stars. It's just, to me, the most exciting, wonderful thing I could think of.
Well, you know, you have come so far, and you've done so many different things now, and actually there was a time when you needed to think about this as an escape because, as I mentioned earlier, you had polio as a child.
Yes, I was part of the wave of the 40s, I think it was.
Well, so many people that I know today, unfortunately, there are several that I know who had polio as children, have life-lasting effects from it. You're obviously terrific.
Well,
what did you do?
I have to thank my mother for that, because she immediately made me start swimming and exercising, and that's how she started me getting interested in ballet. And my leg was affected. In fact, the whole of my left side was affected. And you could see it at one time, you can't see it now. And it was, I believe, it was two things. It was ballet and swimming that did it.
Okay.
Mostly ballet. And she used to stand there with a stick and make me do it.
Here in this beautiful house is an indoor swimming pool.
Yes, I use it too.
You do?
In fact, you know, Bob and I learned to scuba dive in that pool.
This is a wonderful place to scuba.
Great.
Actually, Bob had told me that he had never been in the pool, but now he has.
Well, he hadn't probably when you spoke to him the last time you interviewed him, but in the intervening time, I like to learn new things all the time, so I kind of drag him into it. So scuba diving was last year's thing.
Okay, well, you dragged him into things, and he's dragged you into a lot of things.
Tennis.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
You like it?
Yeah. I'm not very good, but...
Not yet. Not
one
yet.
of these days.
You know. But when you mentioned dancing, actually, you received a scholarship, and that's what brought you to England, to the Royal Ballet, if I recall. Now, was your intent at that time, you went to England, as I understand it, you went without your family. You went yourself.
I was 13 years old. My mother took me there, but she left me. She couldn't afford to stay anyway.
Who did you live with?
By myself, because there was no boarding house attached to the school at that time, so I stayed in a local boarding house. So I learned to look after myself very young.
At 13?
Yeah.
My goodness gracious.
I think I was very lonely, and it was miserable at the time, but it really taught me how to pay bills and appreciate money, and to, you know, really be very independent, take care of myself in lots of ways.
And maybe to become such a good business person today.
Maybe.
Okay, but you know, it's interesting because you did go to ballet.
Yes.
You did receive this scholarship. You did take care of yourself. But when you decided professionally to go out and work, it was as a dancer, but not in ballet.
There just wasn't enough money in ballet to live on. I mean, you really just couldn't pay the rent and eat enough with the money that I was making being a ballet dancer. So I was virtually forced to go and try and do modeling or some other things.
And what was it? What was it you did?
I did dancing and shows. I ended up, when Bob met me, dancing in a place called the Pigalle, which is kind of like the Lido, or was like the Lido in Paris.
Okay, because
with all the feathers and, you know, the glitz and the sequins.
Okay, I was going to ask because
that was fun.
In one of the articles I read, it said you were an exotic dancer.
Yes. I used to have fans and feathers and walk around the stage in a very, very brief bikini. Very brief bikini.
You can still do it now, actually. You have a wonderful figure, and it was there in London as a dancer that you first met Bob Guccione. And we're going to take a break, and we're going to talk, because that's when your whole life changed. And, you know, who would have thought with all those feathers you would have had all this magnificence around you, different kind of magnificence. We're going to take a break, and then we'll talk some more. We're speaking with Kathy Keeton. We're here in her townhouse in New York City. We'll be right back, right after these messages. I'm Arlene Herson, and I'm speaking with Kathy Keeton, and we're here in her home in New York City, where, as we mentioned, you live with your husband, Bob Guccione, and it was he that changed your life. Now, if I can just set it up a little bit, because it's such a difference from the way you set out. There you were in England, a dancer, with a whole different direction to your life, and you meet Bob Guccione. I hear that the first meeting was because his magazine did a review of you that you didn't like.
Well, it wasn't actually a review. I was in a movie, and the movie company, Paramount, as it happened, sent out a press release, which was kind of, Bob picked up and did a little parody on, which I didn't like very much. And then he came to see me with the idea he would photograph me for the magazine, which never happened either.
You know, interesting. When you say that you didn't like it very much, by the way, I hear that your manager called and screamed at him on the telephone and said, you have to come and meet her. But why didn't he photograph you for the magazine?
Well, he always told me I was the wrong type, which annoyed me. I wasn't good looking enough.
How did you feel about that?
I was furious. How would you feel about that?
Well, then how did you wind up together?
I don't know. I was just more interested in what he was doing with the magazine as a company, I guess, than being in it.
Okay, here he had this magazine, Penthouse magazine. His idea was really to do a magazine of beautiful women, different, more blatant, if I could use the word, more explicit than other magazines of its kind. And you were earning money as a dancer, you were a star. He said, take a cut in salary, maybe 90% cut in salary, come work with me. Is that how it happened?
Yes, well, it wasn't quite. I still worked as a dancer for about 6 months. But I really wanted to get out of what I was doing. I was bored to tears. I mean, I didn't see any future in it. And I thought, well, I just get older and, you know, nothing more is going to happen. And I've always been interested in business since I was a kid, as well as science. And I thought, why not? I'd like to try this. And believe me, the day after I did my last show was like getting out of prison. Because you spent your entire life having to work every night when everybody else is going out and having fun. I mean, it's just incredible that you don't have to go to work at night. Here it is, it's nighttime, you can go to a restaurant and have dinner.
That's interesting. So being a dancer and being on stage isn't as glamorous as we all think it is.
It's very hard work. Also, the other thing that in the beginning, to me, hard work had always been physical, always physical. And the idea that going to have lunch with people or sitting in an office and chatting with them was work, was like a joke. This is fun.
Okay, but what you were doing, you were selling ads for a magazine that showed, Penthouse obviously, that showed complete frontal nudity for the first time.
Not at that time.
Not at that time?
Not in England. No, it happened in America.
Okay, but it was pretty risque.
It was very risque.
Pretty risque. Now here you are. How did you sell it? What did you say?
Well, it's a magazine that's read by an awful lot of men with a lot of money who buy lots of things. Men who are very well educated and are very desirable consumers. And that's what I said. You know, I would say, well, you're crazy. You should be in there. They're going to buy your product. I mean, you're in business to sell it, aren't you? These people have more money and are more desirable and more likely to buy your product than the readers of other magazines.
Well, obviously it worked, and it was true.
It's true. It
okay,
worked.
True. Okay, but Penthouse is really, that's what you did there. When you came here...
Oh, I still sell advertising on Penthouse.
You do, in addition to everything else that you do?
Yes.
Okay, we talked in the introduction about balancing the two. I wasn't, because I know how busy you are in Omni. President of Omni, leading science publication in the world today. It was really your interest. You and Bob have so many similarities.
Yeah.
It was your...
It was both of our interests, really.
In science. Okay, I mean, it's a wonderful magazine, actually. It's beautiful. The covers are fabulous. What gave you the idea? What did you have in mind? What did you want to do?
Well, it seemed that in 1974, 75, so many things were being discovered that were really exciting. We broke the genetic code. Black holes were talked about. Clones were in the headlines in the newspapers. And yet, for the general public, there wasn't anywhere to read about these things. There was Scientific American, which is a terrific magazine, but it's really for professionals, and unless you have a PhD in whatever they're talking about, it's very hard to understand it. And we felt that there was room for a magazine that, you know, told people what was happening in like high school freshman standard as opposed to PhD standard.
Okay, you know, actually, it's historic. I mean, you have become, what your feeling was, it's become the leading, as I mentioned.
It's the biggest in the world. It's also going to become the very first Western magazine on sale to the Russians, uncensored, and in their own currency. That's something.
As a matter of fact, we happen to have a copy of the Russian Omni that we are going to be able to show as a special preview to our audience out there, and then we're going to come back and talk some more.
Great.
We're speaking with Kathy Keeton. We're here in her townhouse in New York City, and we'll be right back after these messages. I'm Arlene Herson, and my guest is Kathy Keeton. Actually, we're her guest because we're here in her house in New York City. And you know, you do so much. You know, you're very quiet and very laid back, but you're also very smart and very fit. And you seem to take what you like to do and share it with other people. I mean, you were interested in science, and you've got this incredible science magazine called Omni. You're also interested in fitness. And now you have a magazine called Longevity.
I'm interested in a little bit more than fitness, Arlene. I'm interested in living forever.
I like that.
At least for a long time, anyway.
Okay, you're absolutely correct. Tell us about Longevity.
Longevity is a magazine for young people who want to stay that way.
That's me. I'm getting younger. How do I do it?
Well, there's lots of things you can do now. The whole field of life extension has suddenly become legitimate. There's a lot of money being poured into it. And there are a lot of interesting breakthroughs about to happen. We're beginning to understand why, or how we age for the first time, and things that can actually make us live longer. For example, they have found that if you cuddle newborn rats and puppies and kittens, they live longer. That probably applies to human babies. It does apply to primate babies. So remember, before your baby's 3 weeks old, anybody out there who has a baby, do a lot of kissing and cuddling. It'll make it healthier and live longer.
Well, but how about if we start late in life?
Even if you started exercising at 80, you can improve your body, your bone density and your muscle tone dramatically. And even if you start doing mental exercises in your 80s, you can mentally be as sharp as people of 25. That's very interesting. Exercise is part of that.
And if we start cuddling later, can that make up for the lack of cuddling?
No, that doesn't. It doesn't. Nothing makes up after 3 weeks. That's it.
Oh,
That's
really?
when it happens. Something happens during those 3 weeks. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I do too. You exercise all the time. When you
Yes.
talk about, you know, where exercise can help you at any time in your life, have you always exercised?
Well, I was a dancer, so that grew naturally out of that. But I like it. I mean, I feel very bad if I don't exercise. I start to feel achy and stiff and bad-tempered.
You know, I mentioned to you earlier.
I feel everything looks better when I exercise. And if you think, you rev up your blood flow to your skin and that, and it is a tremendous stress reducer. So you sleep better, you feel better, and you look better.
You know, you're right. I mentioned to you earlier that I have just started doing that. I exercise. I work out in a gym now. It took me years to do that. I have never felt better in my life. I believe I'm getting younger. I'm going to read Longevity, so it'll help me get younger. But you have also written a book, Woman of Tomorrow.
I wrote that book because I was kind of shocked when Omni came out that it was read 80% by men. And to me, Omni is not a magazine aimed at men or women. It's for anybody with a mind, really. And then I started to talk to women, and women are really badly discouraged from science. They're taught that it's not for them, they shouldn't be interested in it, something, impenetrable. So I wrote the book because I was hoping to encourage women to believe that, see how much science could do for them, or taking an interest in it. I mean, everything today, everything that surrounds us, the air we breathe, the carpet we walk on, the kind of home we live in, everything, in one way or another, is affected by science. And science makes the world go round. You should know about that, shouldn't you?
Oh, and what sort of response? Because
it had a very good sale. I'm still getting requests to go and speak at schools, so apparently it's still in libraries. And it was bought by 7 different foreign countries.
Wow, okay, but your point was that women really weren't that, or aren't that interested in science. Do you find that that's changing?
It's changing, yes. Even Omni's readership has increased. It's now 60-40, which is better than 80-20.
Okay, well, science fiction. Science fiction was a passion of yours years ago.
Yes.
But something that a lot of people thought was fiction was the fact that you and Bob Guccione would ever get married. You lived together for 25 years?
Well, we didn't think it was a fiction. It was intended to. We used to sort of patiently explain this to people. But the thing that amused me most of all was every single interview I ever did, why don't you get married? Why don't you get married? And now, why did you get married?
Okay, well, you were engaged for 25 years?
No,
how long?
About 23, actually.
23 years. Okay, that's a long engagement.
I wanted to be sure.
Are you sure?
Yeah, sure.
Has anything changed?
No.
Can you tell us about the wedding?
Well, it was very quiet and very private. Bob and I are very private people. It sounds crazy, but we are. And we had it in a little church down the road. And just his mom and dad and my cousin.
Okay, when you say you and Bob are very private people, we still have to realize where this is all coming from, where it all started from. It started with Penthouse magazine. Okay, Penthouse, you are married to Bob Guccione, who people say is the man who dethroned Vanessa Williams, Miss America, who was the first person in the United States to show frontal nudity, complete frontal nudity of women. The magazine shocked a lot of people. Now here you are, successful businesswoman, believer in women's rights, and you're Mrs. Bob Guccione. I'm sure you get a lot of flack from people.
Oh, from people, a lot of extreme feminists I get flack from, but they really don't pay attention to them. I mean, they're crazy lunatic fringe anyway. So.
Okay,
I mean, anybody who knows anything about the business world will know that 70% of the top executives at Penthouse are women.
Okay, 70% that work at the magazine are women, and I know that, and I know you're so very supportive of women, but still, it's not only feminists, it's people who have a view of what Penthouse magazine, and they will say to you, you know, how can you be married to somebody like Bob Guccione? Now, obviously, you have a different view of him than we, so share, tell us a little bit.
I love him.
What is the best part of your relationship?
The working relationship that we've had together has been terrific, and Bob has always encouraged me, and Bob even wrote my first business letters. And he's always supported me in every single thing I wanted. There are very few men that do that.
That's true. That's true. Actually, you know, the house is beautiful. You and Bob next week are going to graciously, and I thank you very much. I understand that, I will tell our audience that we are going to have a tour of this beautiful house because it is absolutely magnificent. And you and Bob have been good to each other, and you are also very good to all the people around you. The people that you work for tell me that you never forget birthdays, that at Christmas time your office looks like Saks Fifth Avenue, and you have been very generous with us in inviting us here in your home.
Thank you.
And I thank you very much for having us here.
Pleasure.
And next week we'll be back with a tour of the house.
Great.
I hope that you have enjoyed the time that we spent here with Kathy Keeton. I'll be back in just a moment, so please stay right there. I'm Arlene Herson, and I hope that you enjoyed meeting Kathy Keeton as much as I did. We are here in her house in New York City, and next week she and Bob are going to give us a tour of this absolutely incredible house. So please be sure to join us then. Meantime, good night. See you next week.